The United Way of the Mid-Ohio Valley is offering helpful resources for people who have been affected by the warehouse fire. Executive Director of the United Way of Parkersburg, Stacy DeSico, says its focus was connecting people to resources quickly and accurately. That includes their role through West Virginia 211, helping track services available in real time. United Way is also watching for unmet needs. DeSico says they step in as a gap filler when another agency cannot cover something. She says in emergencies like this one, communication and coordination can make all the difference.
We are responding the same way that we do day in and day out, no matter what the situation is in the community. We're always going to be, as United Way and as West Virginia 211, we're going to be collecting the information, collecting the resources on the ground, and making sure that we disseminate that accurately to the community. And then also just making sure that we are staying on top of those pieces of information, because it is a fluid situation. So the resources were changing constantly during that time.
DeSico says they are staying in contact with partner agencies to avoid duplication and spot gaps faster. United Way says the goal is to make sure no one falls through the cracks during the aftermath if they need help. As recovery continues, they'll keep pushing out consistent guidance to the community.